getting an autism diagnosis opens up the gates to a lot of different therapies, but it also, unfortunately, will cause them to be underserved medically as well, because a lot of their symptoms just get written off as autism. Oh, they're head banging? Autism. Oh, they're constipated? Autism.
Hi, Brittyn.
Hi. Thanks so
Good
much for
morning
having
to
me.
you.
Yes, and good night to you. We are 12 and a half hours different
Yeah,
than each other.
yeah. Brittyn, I wanted to ask you one thing, I mean, the main thing that inspired me and made me connect to you was, the personal passion that you made into a profession. So would you share a little bit about your brother?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm a dietitian. I specialize in kids on the autism spectrum and help them expand their diet and help them get the nutrients that they need to feel good. And so they can focus well and just do their best in school, therapy, and in life. And my inspiration behind all of this is my brother Barrett, and he's 28 now. And he was diagnosed with autism when he was 2. And so I'm his older sister. And so I've always grown up knowing autism. It's been a huge part of my life since I was very young. And so I was able to see the impact that nutrition, the importance of nutrition for kids on the autism spectrum. My brother was an extremely limited eater. He only ate 5 or 6 different foods growing up. And then my mom really utilized nutrition and it made a big difference for him. And so I've been able to help teach other parents how to implement nutrition, especially when their children have really limited diets, and how to help them get those nutrients and approach everything in a way that is very sensory friendly and autism friendly. We want to make sure we approach it in the right way.
Wow. Wow. And how's he now? Is he still eating 4 to 5 things, or like, how's he doing now?
He has definitely expanded his diet. I think that he definitely still has some growth, of course, but so does my husband. It's like we all have some room to grow, but he's done really well. And still, a lot of times I'm still surprised if something new will come out on the table and he'll try it and be like, oh, I'm not sure about that. I'm like, that's okay. You don't have to eat it. But it's really cool that he's open to trying new things, because sensory overwhelm is definitely still a big thing for him. So food really plays into that. So I'm just proud of him when he will try something that feels out of his comfort zone.
Wow. Wow. I had another question for you. Like, so you've seen your brother go through therapies and many things. Why only food? Why only nutrition? Like what about that made you feel, no, 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 I want to go ahead and pursue this and help other parents, which you're doing so wonderfully. So what made you like, why food? Why nutrition?
I think I've always just been very interested in food. When my mom, she did different diets for my brother when he was younger. I mean, the only one that we really knew of the time to try was the gluten-free diet and gluten-free casein-free diet. And so she actually did try that with him when he was really young. And he had such a positive response to it that the doctors actually were like, hey, you might consider this for any other kids, because they may also have an immune reaction to these foods. And so she was like, okay, we're going to try it. And it actually helped me focus a lot better. I don't follow it anymore, but when I was young, it really helped me too. And so I think I had that interest in nutrition from such a young age that growing up, I learned a lot. And then when I didn't know that I wanted to be a dietitian. I didn't know that I wanted to do this. I was in school pre-med. I was ready to go to med school, and then I realized I didn't want to be in school for 10 years or more. So I found out that there was a nutrition program at my school, and I pivoted. And once I got accepted to the nutrition school, I realized how I could combine these two passions. But it was kind of something that just really happened naturally. It wasn't something that I had planned for a really long time. And now it is very obviously my life's purpose, but I think it just kind of like unraveled in the right
Mm,
way.
mm. And I'm so happy you pivoted, because that's what, I mean, that's who you are now, like, So
Yeah.
you spoke about gluten-free, casein-free, and a lot of parents think that helps. It's like blanket, it'll help every child who has autism. So what is your viewpoint about that?
Yes, everyone has their own opinion when it comes to this. And the hard thing is, just like you said, there's no blanket approach to autism at all. And so anything that is said, this is for every single person, whether it's a diet or a supplement or a food, it's probably not that easy. When it comes to gluten, and so casein is the protein in dairy. So some people will say just the gluten-free dairy-free diet, gluten-free casein-free diet, same thing. Um, a lot of people will try it and it will be like life-changing for some people. Other people will try it and they're like, am I doing it wrong? I am not noticing any changes. And that's because it comes down to such an individualized process in the body. You can be sensitive or you cannot be sensitive. And so for these people who are trying the gluten-free, casein-free diet and they're not noticing any kind of progress, well, their child may not be sensitive. They could be sensitive to something else. There could be something else that really benefits them, but there's
Mm,
no one size fits all. And I get frustrated whenever we oversimplify anything where some people are like, no, it doesn't help anyone. And I'm like, well, I very clearly see that it can change somebody's life. But then the other side of things where it helps everyone isn't necessarily the case either. The research is super mixed. And I think that if we were a little bit more maybe clear about who our control group is. Maybe all the kids have gluten sensitivity or none of them do. I don't think that we're doing enough when it comes to the research, and now we're getting clouded results. So I
mm,
think that we need to be a lot more clear with the research that we're doing and clearly identifying, like, are there some kids that have an immune response and are there some that aren't, and how can we like figure that out in terms of doing research that's going to give us correct results. So there's no one
yeah,
size fits all, but it can be really beneficial for some kids.
right, right. So how, I mean, are there some like a food test, an allergy test, or like, some way by which parents would know, oh yeah, this helps me, or they just eliminate foods and they get started? I mean, it's so confusing. So what are your
So
views?
what makes it really confusing? It's already confusing, but there's also multiple ways that we can react to foods. So we have food allergies, food sensitivities, and food intolerances. And those three things are actually all different. So the way that our body responds and what kind of immune reaction we're having, the way we test for it, all different. So if you go into your doctor and you say, hey, I think my child has an allergy to gluten, well, they're going to do a food allergy panel, which when we have a food allergy, a lot of times we think like anaphylaxis, throat
Mm,
swelling, hives, this immediate reaction. I mean, it can be life-threatening.
mm,
That is usually not what a child on the spectrum who is sensitive to gluten, they don't have an allergy. So if they get an allergy test, it's going to come back negative, but they actually have a sensitivity. So then unfortunately, they're told to just not follow that diet, but they just didn't do the right test. So you can be sensitive. You can, and then there's like lactose intolerance, where it's more of a digestive issue. You actually don't have the right digestive enzymes to break down the food. A food sensitivity is a way that your immune system is responding and it is labeling that food, saying like, hey, this is not supposed to be here in the body incorrectly. So you're not supposed to be sensitive to food. Your body is labeling it that way. And then your body goes to attack it and you start to see inflammation. Your body's trying to help you, but the repercussion is inflammation, which then can cause all these other issues. And so there are some tests out there. A lot of the ones that you're probably getting ads for online are probably not accurate. There is one test that I find is better than the rest. It's called the MRT, mediator release test. I've used it with clients who do need to test, and I found that it is incredibly accurate. And for kids who it does come up gluten or dairy, that they are sensitive to it and we remove it, we often see really great results. Now, the only surefire way, like 100% of the time, would be to remove it like a food completely from the diet and do an elimination diet. So for people who maybe don't have access to testing, or maybe it's not available in their location, or it's not financially accessible, you can always do an elimination diet. And I think that that is the clearest way to do it, although the hardest, especially with kids with really limited diets.
Yeah. So to eliminate the diet, for how long should they do it? As in 1 month, 2 months, 6 months?
The very minimum, I would say, is 6 weeks. It takes time for those proteins to get out of the body and for that inflammation to start going down. So 6 weeks, absolute minimum. I typically see people start noticing a lot of progress more around like the 6-month mark. So it really does take time, and it's frustrating. It feels like the clock is ticking super slowly when you're putting in a lot of effort to do a diet like this, but it really can pay off if it's the right fit. And so I have a lot of parents who are like, well, I don't want to invest the time or the effort if it's not worth it, which I completely understand, of course. So there's definitely a balance.
Mm. And what about some parents who say, we are on GFCF, but once in a week we give him a little bit of cake, just little bit of chapati. That's okay. What do you think about that?
It depends on the child. So, like I said, it does take time for those proteins to get out of the system. Now, I would say, okay, if you're giving it just a little bit, who is it for? Is it for the child, or are we wanting them to be involved? And I understand, because food is so emotional. So maybe we're giving them that food because we want them to be involved in something that we love too. Is there another way that we can involve them where it doesn't maybe take a toll on their immune system? Then I also ask, do you ever notice an uptick in behaviors? Do you notice that maybe they're showing signs of a headache, or that their bowel movements are now not regular? Do we see other signs here? Now, the cool thing is that someone may not have to be gluten and dairy free forever. We have to do work on this, but we can work on our gut, our gut health. We can work on other pieces of our life to help bring down inflammation, to help our bodies be in like the best state possible. And I've seen people who will grow out of food sensitivities as well. You can grow out of food allergies too, but it's not just something that typically just happens on its own. It's usually something where you have to also be working on a healthy diet in the background. We have to be focusing on our gut health. I think a lot of people go gluten-free, and then unfortunately they're not eating healthier. They're eating less healthy because a lot of the gluten-free foods have a lot of sugars and not so great ingredients. So we're not actually, besides removing gluten, we're not actually doing our body a lot of favors. So, over time, maybe a few years, it may be possible to go back to not
Yeah.
following a gluten and dairy-free diet, and your child may thrive still.
Yeah. But that's so, it's so positive to even think of it. Ki, wow, I can go back. So that's a big thing. And coming from, a dietitian who specializes in autism, I mean, that's really good news, I feel. I
Definitely.
also wanted to ask, and that's very even descriptive. I mean, it really helped me also to understand a lot. Very simple, very, I really get an understanding. There is something called as a leaky gut. I mean, what exactly is this leaky gut? In autism, it's very commonly heard thing.
Definitely. So what leaky gut is, just in some simple terms, so I'm going to use my hands so you can see. So our gut lining should be really, really, really tight. We have these gut cells, and everything's supposed to be really healthy and tight, so nothing can go through. Now, what happens, think if you get like a cut on your finger and it gets infected and it gets puffy and red, your gut can also have that kind of inflammation. And when it gets puffy and red, it starts to kind of separate like this because it's so puffy. And now we're talking like microscopic, tiny, tiny openings. We're not talking big, like where chunks of food could go through. We're talking where bacteria, like single bacteria, could slip through, where food proteins, whenever they're really broken down by our gut, could go through. And the problem with that is that they're not supposed to go through. So
Mm.
when they do go through, a bacteria travels outside of that gut lining, or a protein travels outside of that gut lining, your immune system is like, hold on, what's going on here? And it starts trying to reconcile, it starts trying to fix it. Again, our body really trying to help us, but the repercussions of that are a lot of systemic inflammation because
Ah,
now it's trying to fight all of those proteins and those bacteria that are outside. So this is the simplest way I can put it because it can get really complex. But the problem with leaky gut is now we are more likely to have more food sensitivities. We are more likely to have symptoms like headache, migraine, eczema, lots of other symptoms showing up. And it's because our immune system is working on overdrive. Our gut is not as strong as it should be. There's probably other things going on alongside of this inside the gut if it's gotten to the point of leaky gut, like imbalance of bacteria, which already is really common in autism. So now it becomes more of a systemic inflammation issue.
and kids may not be even able to tell us, that they're getting a headache or they're getting this, like they just would have those self-stimulatory behaviors which would go up and we would feel, oh, there's a behavioral issue going on there, or it's just a
Yep.
sensory challenge there. So that's why this aspect that you're mentioning is really important, no? Yeah. I mean, I don't know how it is there written, but here I know a lot of my kids, when they go to a gastroenterologist, they say, oh, he has autism. So this is how it would be. Like it's, you need to treat it, right? You need to give suggestions. So parents are like, what do I do? So I hope this information, whosoever is listening, is going to be helpful there. So,
I oftentimes just being swept under the autism rug. And it's sad because getting an autism diagnosis opens up the gates to a lot of different therapies, but it also, unfortunately, will cause them to be underserved medically as well, because a lot of their symptoms just get written off as autism. Oh, they're head banging, autism. Oh, they're constipated, autism. It's like, no, there's actually some major things going on underneath, and now you're not serving this patient well just because they have a diagnosis of autism. Head
yeah,
banging is actually a really classic sign of headaches. And so for kids who have chronic headache and migraine, I actually worked with this little kid. He would take the palm of his hand and hit the nose of or the bridge of his nose, and
yeah,
he would bloody his nose. And it was so bad. He was getting into really harmful, injurious behaviors. And turned out this little boy had leaky gut, and had some other food sensitivities,
mm,
and he stopped doing that, and he's been free of any self-injurious behaviors for 3 years now.
wow,
And it really just he had yeast overgrowth, he had lots of stuff going on. And it really took us digging a little deeper to figure out, and when all of that went away. And so I always tell parents, behavior is communication. So if a child is doing something, even if it's a symptom of autism, if they might be communicating something to you, and that could be that
yeah,
they're hurting, are not able to tell you, or they don't know that it's not normal for them to, feel that.
absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of kids, when they come to me and when they're into this, or when they, they just come closer, the first thing that I tell parents is try. Maybe, it's like they feel gassy and, that bloated, and they're not able to pass motions every day. And, inside how we feel so the first thing that I tell them is check the diet, check the diet. And yeah, so it has helped a lot of kids, and it's wonderful, yeah. Anything. So this is about gas and not able to pass motions, and that's about these things. Are there certain foods that you feel, because some kids who have a diagnosis of autism don't sleep? I mean, so difficult to those biological rhythms are all chaotic, nothing is in place. So is there some food that may disturb or may help with the sleep cycle?
Sleep and the gut are heavily related. And so we also see that kids who are chronically constipated sleep a lot worse. We have research studies to back this up. It's very interesting. So gut issues, increased gut issues, decreased quality of sleep. So we have to really look into, okay, what's going on in the diet? How can we support the gut? How can we get the right foods in there to also promote sleep and focus, all of these things, it all fits together. And if a child isn't sleeping well, I think, okay, what's going on in the gut? Number two, what are their vitamin and mineral levels like? Because iron is especially important for sleep, and there's a huge percentage of the population that is low in iron, whether or not they're on the spectrum. But ferritin is our storage iron in our liver, and we actually see that that is heavily linked to sleep quality and restless leg syndrome. So it's interesting to see that as well. So I also check their iron levels and look at vitamins and minerals. From there, I also say, okay, well, what is the balance of their diet look like? So I had somebody, I run a membership site for parents, and last week she was saying, I think my daughter wakes up every night at 1 a.m. and I think she's genuinely hungry, and she asks for a glass of milk and a piece of bread. And she's like, I really think that she's hungry, so I don't want to like deny that from her or take it away. So we started talking about, well, what does dinner look like for her? Well, she doesn't want to eat a lot of dinner, or when she does, it's just like a starch. And so we started talking about the importance of getting in some protein and some fat at dinner, because that helps keeps us fuller longer and balances our blood sugars throughout the night. So what I think was happening with this little girl, yes, she was genuinely hungry, but I also think her blood sugars probably were all over the place. Well, and maybe had dropped, and her body wakes her up and is like, hey, you need to eat. You need some quick energy like bread, and you need some protein and fat like milk. So it's just interesting when we start digging into the diet, where are we seeing the gaps? And a lot of times kids on the spectrum are not eating enough protein anyway. And protein is super important to help keep us full and keep our blood sugars in a good place, which is going to naturally help with sleep quality as well.
Mm. When we, like as occupational therapists, we are taught, the sleep wake cycle, the hunger thirst cycle, and the bowel bladder cycle. These cycles they're the basic biological rhythm. So what you say now makes so much sense, that if the bowel cycle is not regular and the child is constipated, I never thought of it the way you just, described. Before you go, I wanted to help you to help your child improve faster. Here are 4 things that you can do. 1, you can subscribe to my channel so that whatever tips, strategies, insights, whatever I share, they come to you as notifications into your inbox and you are updated on a weekly basis. 2, you can buy my book, Looking Beyond Labels, Becoming a Mindful Parent. It is available on Amazon. It's a guidebook. It will guide you on really, really, really how to help you to help your child better. 3, I've done a lot of masterclasses which are all available as recordings on my website, khushi.net.in/online-events. You will be able to refer to a lot of courses related to sleep, toilet and potty training, sensory diet, oral motor challenges, emotional wellness, and so many of those. And then number 4 would be, we can meet and I can guide you. We can meet weekly. I meet parents weekly for some of my courses, which you can find on khushi.net.in/events. And we can meet weekly. You get to ask me your questions. I share what to do, how to help, and it's all done in a group setup. It's an amazing deep dive trying to understand your child. And I'm sure it transforms your perspective. It transforms the way you work with your child. And these are the 4 things that I feel would really help you. Thank you.